Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Saptarshi Banerjea, a 5th generation homeopath. I've inherited the ancestral wisdom from my great-great-granddad, Hashimoto Banerjea. He was an assistant to the famous Dr. Salzar of Austria. He passed his wisdom to my great-granddad, Dr. Kishori
Saptarshi Banerjea, a 5th generation.
Dr. K.M. Banerjea and N.M.
I've inherited the ancestral wisdom
that founded the Bengal Medical College. They went to America to learn homeopathy. Chaudhary learned Metromedica from Kenya, whereas Banerjea learned Metromedica and Miasms from J.E. Challen. And J.E. Challen gave us the 4th miasm, the tubercular miasm. He passed on his wisdom to my granddad, Dr. N.K. Banerjea, and finally to my father, Dr. Subrata Banerjea, who is the author of Miasmatic Prescribing. That's how, my friends, miasms came into my family. I work as a clinical consultant in various rural and slum clinics, apart from running my own medical centers in Calcutta. I try and share this ancestral heritage of simple, classical miasmatic prescribing across the globe in Japan, Croatia, Thailand, UK, and the US. Now, my friends, why should we learn miasms? The consideration of miasms is of paramount importance, particularly in this world of drug-induced suppressions. It is difficult to perceive a clear picture of the disease. The world is reeling under the cocktail of conventional chemicals. So in this drug-dependent 21st century, my friends, knowledge of miasms is the way forward. How is that? The value, my friends, of selecting an anti-miasmatic medicine. It covers the psychic essence, the nature, the character, and the individual is important. Even if you don't have any recognizable totality, you can prescribe. To give you an example, a patient is presenting to you with insomnia. There are no distinguishing symptoms, no distinguishing modalities. But how can you prescribe? Prescribe on the essence of the person. Prescribe on the character. Think of this person. He's suspicious, he's jealous, he's exploitative. What is that? That's psychosis. My friends, in this course, we'll study the fundamentals of miasmatic prescribing, the pillars of miasmatic prescribing. What is that? Remember MPEG, miasmatic totality, symptomatic totality, essence, and keynotes. These are the 4 pillars of miasmatic prescribing. Remember, Hahnemann has mentioned about this in section 153 and 209, where he mentions about PQRS, and you can prescribe on singular symptoms. Think of irritation for psoric, incoordination for psychosis, destruction for syphilis, dissatisfaction for tubercular. I'll be sharing with you the emotional essence of each miasm, the anxious psoric, the greedy psychotic, the depressed syphilitic, the changeable tubercular. I'll be also sharing with you common clinical conditions which is encountered all over the world. How will you tackle those cases miasmatically? We'll be sharing with you osteoarthritis, asthma, neurological, gastrointestinal, genitourinary, and finally cancer. I'll be sharing with you cases where miasmatic prescribing has benefited. I'll be sharing with you cases of cystic hygroma, psoriasis, Hashimoto's thyroiditis. We'll be talking about different polycrests, my friends. I'll be sharing with you lycopodium, phosphorus, helicarp, how you can dissect these celebrated remedies miasmatically. My dear friends, we don't want to change the way you prescribe, but I plead to you, incorporate miasms in your prescribing. Think, after repertorization, you come across 3 to 4 remedies. You search, which one covers my case miasmatically? And then you'll be definitely sure that yes, my medicine is correct. And their miasmatically and symptomatic totality is matching. They're nothing but 2 sides of the same coin. My friends, this is a practical program where I'll be sharing with you simple, classical, non-confusing miasmatic prescribing. And it has survived and is time-tested for the last 200 years. So come, join in and learn the ancestral heritage of miasmatic incorporation in chronic cases so that you can apply that in your everyday life.
Hi, my name is Dale Emerson. I'm here today to talk to you about a brand new project. It's called the Homeopathic Academy. But here at BJain, what we're doing is we're inviting the leading teachers to come and join us to allow those students, be they graduate or undergraduate, or be they even professional homeopaths, to have access 24 hours a day. We're in a soundproof bunker room here with the most leading state-of-the-art technology. This technology is video technology, but beyond video technology. This technology will allow us, using our special green room here, to show your screen, show your statistics or your graphics, your PowerPoint presentations, and even to share whatever other multimedia objects that you may have that you would like to present to your students. Beyond video technology. This technology will allow us, using our special green room here, to show your screen, show your statistics or your graphics, your PowerPoint presentations, and even to share whatever other multimedia objects that you may have that you would like to present to your students.
Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Saptarshi Banerjea, a 5th generation homeopath. I've inherited the ancestral wisdom from my great-great-granddad, Kalipada Banerjea. He was an assistant to the famous Dr. Salzar of Austria. He passed his wisdom to my great-granddad, Dr. Kishori Mohan Banerjea. Dr. K.N. Banerjea and N.M. Chaudhary were compatriots. They founded the Bengal Medical College. They went to America to learn homeopathy. Chaudhary learned Metromedica from Kent, whereas Banerjea learned Metromedica. Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Saptarshi Banerjea, a 5th generation homeopath. I've inherited the ancestral wisdom from my great-great-granddad, Kalipada Banerjea. He was an assistant to the famous Dr. Salzar of Austria. He passed his wisdom to my great-granddad, Dr. Kishori Mohan Banerjea. Dr. K.N. Banerjea and N.M. Chaudhary were compatriots. They founded the Bengal Medical College. They went to America to learn homeopathy. Chaudhary learned Metromedica from Kent, whereas Banerjea learned Metromedica and Miasms from J.E. Challen. And J.E. Challen gave us the 4th miasm, the tubercular miasm. He passed on his wisdom to my granddad, Dr. N.K. Banerjea, and finally to my father, Dr. Subrata Banerjea, who is the author of Miasmatic Prescribing. That's how, my friends, miasms came into my family. I work as a clinical consultant in various rural and slum clinics, apart from running my own medical centers in Calcutta. I try and share this ancestral heritage of simple, classical miasmatic prescribing across the globe in Japan, Croatia, Thailand, UK, and the US. Now, my friends, why should we learn miasms? The consideration of miasms is of paramount importance, particularly in this world of drug-induced suppressions. It is difficult to perceive a clear picture of the disease. The world is reeling under the cocktail of conventional chemicals. So in this drug-dependent 21st century, my friends, knowledge of miasms is the way forward. How is that? The value, my friends, of selecting an anti-miasmatic medicine. It covers the psychic essence, the nature, the character, and the individual is important. Even if you don't have any recognizable totality, you can prescribe. I'll give you an example. A patient is presenting to you with insomnia. There are no distinguishing symptoms, no distinguishing modalities. But how can you prescribe? Prescribe on the essence of the person. Prescribe on the character. Think of this person. He's suspicious, he's jealous, he's exploitative. What is that? That's psychosis. My friends, in this course, we'll study the fundamentals of miasmatic prescribing, the pillars of miasmatic prescribing. What is that? Remember MTech, miasmatic totality, symptomatic totality, essence, and keynotes. These are the 4 pillars of miasmatic prescribing. Remember, Hahnemann has mentioned about this in section 153 and 209, where he mentions about PQRS, and you can prescribe on singular symptoms. Think of irritation for psora, incoordination for psychosis, destruction for syphilis, dissatisfaction for tubercular. I'll be sharing with you the emotional essence of each miasm, the anxious psoric, the greedy psychotic, the depressed syphilitic, the changeable tubercular. I'll be also sharing with you common clinical conditions which is encountered all over the world. How will you tackle those cases miasmatically? We'll be sharing with you osteoarthritis, asthma, neurological, gastrointestinal, genitourinary, and finally cancer. I'll be sharing with you cases where miasmatic prescribing has benefited. I'll be sharing with you cases of cystic hygroma, psoriasis, Hashimoto's thyroiditis. We'll be talking about different polycrests, my friends. I'll be sharing with you lycopodium, phosphorus, helicarp, how you can dissect these celebrated remedies miasmatically. My dear friends, we don't want to change the way you prescribe, but I plead to you, incorporate miasms in your prescribing. Think, after repertorization, you come across 3 to 4 remedies. You search, which one covers my case miasmatically? And then you'll be definitely sure that yes, my medicine is correct. And their miasmatically and symptomatic totality is matching. They're nothing but 2 sides of the same coin. My friends, this is a practical program where I'll be sharing with you simple, classical, non-confusing miasmatic prescribing. And it has survived and is time-tested for the last 200 years. So come, join in and learn the ancestral heritage of miasmatic incorporation in chronic cases so that you can apply that in your everyday practice. Whatever you learn, you can apply it from the next day. For enrollment into the course, log on to www.homeopathicacademy.com. Thank you very much.
A very good morning to all our esteemed guests, to colleagues, and to dear learners. I am Dr. Rashi, subject matter expert of homeopathy at the Homeopathic Academy, heartily welcoming you all to this webinar. We are here today to discuss a very important topic on learning the art of rapid miasmatic prescribing with Dr. Banerjea. Dr. Saptarshi Banerjea, can we have you here, please?
Hello, everyone.
So we have him right here with us. A little about Dr. Banerjea. So Dr. Banerjea inherits his clinical acumen and wisdom from his illustrious father, Dr. Subrata Banerjea. Being the 5th generation homeopath, Dr. Saptarshi has inherited the wisdom and homeopathic heritage of over 100 years. He finished his MD with specialization in Materia Medica, the Calcutta Homeopathic College, awarded a gold medal for his first position in All India MD entrance examination. He holds postgraduate workshop in Malaysia, Bangkok, and Tokyo. He's a lecturer at Allen College of Homeopathy, England, Bengal Allen Medical Institute, which offers international programs for overseas homeopaths frequently. Some of his books and articles are mentioned right on your screen. Scope of Traditional, Small Medicines, in a drug-dependent pathology of cholelithiasis, comparative materia medica of lesser-known medicines for destructive aggression, meeting materia medica. चिट्ठी के जमाने से उठकर आज हम वेबिनार्स के टाइम में आ गए हैं. We've come a long way down from a very slow-paced life to a very fast one. ऐसे में, as homeopaths, how far are we connected to the roots of homeopathy, to the fundamentals of homeopathy? Hahnemann has mentioned about the miasmatic diagnosis of a patient, but are we really doing that in our clinics? I don't think so. So that is what we are going to discuss here tonight. But before we begin, let me tell you something about the Homeopathic Academy. What is the Homeopathic Academy about? The Homeopathic Academy is BJain's venture into the digital arena. The BJain is not a new name to us. The Homeopathic Academy, or the THA as we fondly call it, is BJain's another earnest endeavor to take homeopathy forward into the digital arena. The Homeopathic Academy offers you a range of online courses by well-known academicians on varied subjects of homeopathy at undergraduate, postgraduate, UPSC, and CME level. All these courses are enriched with state-of-the-art audio-video technology, text and vector animations, subtitled lectures, and multimedia videos built by a dynamic team of qualified doctors, video editors, and many more professions. So we have here on your screens a little about the Homeopathic Academy. These are some of our courses which will be available to you on the website www.thehomeopathicacademy.com. You are only as good as your team. So let me introduce you to two team members of the Homeopathic Academy. Mr. Abhishek Jain, who will be dealing with all your technical queries regarding the Homeopathic Academy. And we have with us Dr. Rajesh, who will be looking after the webinar.
Hello everyone. Welcome to the Homeopathic Academy, the live webinar by Dr. Saptarshi Banerjea. I am here to help you with your technical questions related to the Homeopathic Academy at the end of this session. Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Rashi.
The Homeopathic Academy is one of the best ventures of the BJain as yet. They've always been serviceable. They've always been the best at serving the homeopathic community. They've been there with books, they've been there with magazines and everything. And now with the changing times, they've come up with this online video service, not just to supplement your studies, but to make you better homeopaths. So let us come back to this webinar. The uniqueness of this webinar lies in reaching each one of you personally. You can put up your questions directly to Dr. Banerjea, but I would request you not to flood our chats with your questions while he's talking, because that may disturb Dr. Banerjea. So over to you, Dr. Banerjea. We will begin in a minute. I would like Dr. Rajesh to please guide our learners regarding using the interface. Dr. Rajesh, can we have you here? Okay, I think we've lost connection with Dr. Rajesh. So I'll tell you, on the right-hand side panel of your screens, you have a short chat box there. You may type your questions or whatever message you have for Dr. Banerjea right in there, and press the button next to it to send it to us. Kindly do that only after Dr. Banerjea's lecture, because that may disturb Dr. Banerjea and we wouldn't want that. Over to you, Dr. Banerjea.
Thank you very much.
Hello and welcome everyone from wherever you are joining in. I'll be sharing with you today very briefly about miasms and why miasms are important in our day-to-day practice. Obviously, it's a very big topic, but I'll try to narrow it down so that you're intrigued, you are enthusiastic to try and incorporate miasms in your practice. It is sometimes very difficult to go out of the box, to go out of a comfort zone and prescribe something which is not in our domain. But believe me, miasmatic totality and symptomatic totality are always two sides of the same coin. So incorporating miasms is always very useful. And I'll give you a very simple way to understand that. I've learned this from my forefathers, and I want you to understand this as well. What I'm able to do, you can able to do as well. So sometimes it's like a formula. If you know the formula for the miasms, you can incorporate with your patients in your day-to-day practice. I'll start off with the importance of miasms. You can get obviously two types of cases. You can get cases where there is clarity of symptoms. You have a good, clear picture, non-suppressed cases. And there you can incorporate the MTech, miasmatic totality of symptoms, essence, and keynotes. So as I shared with you, symptoms and miasms are just two sides of the same coin, and one cannot be prescribed without the other. I'll share with you later on that how you can get to incorporate that as well. It is always very important, my friends, to ascertain the surface miasm. I'm sure you understand this, that many times throughout the course of our lives, we undergo change of symptoms. We undergo change of the surface symptoms. And thereby, sometimes the miasmatic surface also changes, surface miasm also changes. So it's always important to understand what is the surface miasm. If you understand Hahnemann words, is the outwardly reflected picture. So that is not only applicable for symptomatic totality, that is also applicable for miasmatic totality, outwardly reflected picture of the internal essence of the disease. So when you ascertain the surface miasm, you can also incorporate with the totality as well. So 50% it's the surface miasm, 50% is totality, essence, and keynotes. I'll give you keywords and criteria of the four miasms. Those who are unaware of the fourth miasm, it is the tubercular miasm. You have psoriasis, psychosis, syphilis, which was incorporated by Hahnemann. Tubercular miasm was incorporated later on by John Henry Allen in his book Psora, Pseudo-Psora. He mentions tubercular is a combination sometimes of psora and syphilis. And John Henry Allen gave quite a lot of importance to tubercular miasm. And you have seen in the pre-video that my great-granddad went to America to study miasms from John Henry Allen, and he brought back the tubercular miasm, which we incorporate a lot in our day-to-day practice. So try and understand this. It's like the formula so that you can incorporate this in your practice as well. I'll share with you the four miasms and the keywords. Psora. You see the color in the background is blue. Why is that? There's an author called Ortega, O-R-T-E-G-A. Ortega, in his book Notes on Miasms, he mentions that blue is the color of psora, because if you think of a patient who is having less oxygen in his body, hypoxia, and how is hypoxia manifested? Hypoxia is manifested through blueness, through cyanosis. So whenever you understand the blueness for psora, the key feature is lack, hypo, scanty. So the criteria, if you see here, I've mentioned lack, hypo, and scanty. But along with that, what is the key word for psora? It is irritation. How will you understand irritation? Think of physical irritation. So they're always itching. They're scratching constantly. Think of medicine like sulfur, well, itching and scratching constantly. Now, how do you understand mental irritation? Think of the 3 A's I've shared here. Anxiety, alertness, apprehension. So always anxious, always apprehensive. What's going to happen? Am I going to get this disease? Always living on the edge. So think of remedies like arsenic. Think of remedies like argentum nitricum, aconite, who have this anxiety, who have this apprehension, alertness. So remember, the key word for psora is irritation. That can be characterized as physical, that can be characterized as emotional irritation. A lot of itching and scratching is physical, whereas anxiety, alertness, apprehension is emotional irritation. But if you see, I have mentioned here hypo, scanty, absence, which is a criteria for psora. So any condition, wherever there is hypo condition, is always psora. So similarly, think of someone who has hypoimmunity. So there is an increased sensitivity to catch an infection. Hypoimmunity to start with is always Psora. If you see the next miasm, it's a loud color. It's a loud yellow color, bright yellow color of psychosis. Again, Ortega mentions, if you think of a patient who's suffering from jaundice, what is the condition there? High bilirubin levels. So excess. What is the manifestation? Yellowness of the skin, yellowness of the conjunctiva, yellowness of the mucous membranes. Yellow is the color of psychosis. Keyword you see again, incoordination. How do you understand that? Physical incoordination of growth. So you're getting proliferation, you're getting excess, tumors, warts, fibroids, lipomas, all kinds of excess proliferation is psychosis. Emotional incoordination. I'm trying to concentrate, but my mind is wandering off to somewhere else. So absent-mindedness, my friends, is psychosis. So you can get emotional incoordination, you can get physical incoordination as well. How do you understand the criteria? As I shared with you, all excess, hypersexuality, excess working, workaholic, anything to do with excess is generally classified under psychosis. So incoordination is the keyword. One of the criteria is definitely hyper and excess. If you see here, I mentioned destruction is the key word for syphilis. Why is that? If you think of a case where there is total destruction, danger is the color, and the color is red. So how will you understand destruction? It could be physical, again it could be emotional. Physical destruction, destruction of tissues, destruction of cells. So wherever there you have pus formation, wherever you have necrosis, gangrene, suppuration, ulcerations, close your eyes and think of a syphilitic remedy. Mental destruction. I have lost the love to live. Think of a case of aurum metallicum. The no desire to live. They are contemplating on suicide. Hopelessness with total loss of love for one's own life. That kind of destructive tendencies is grouped under syphilis. If you see, the criteria is very interesting for syphilis. DYS. What is DYS? Any difficult manifestation. So very painful menstruation, dysmenorrhea, they're generally classified as syphilis. Dysphagia, difficult deglutition is classified under syphilis. But obviously, if you get more particular symptoms, that will be denoting that specific miasm. So these are general criteria to differentiate. But obviously, if there are particular modalities, particular sensation, you have to give importance to that. And that becomes more peculiar in those cases. I come to the fourth, and that is tubercular. You see the color in the background? The color is purple. Why is the color purple? If you think of tubercular, I shared with you, it's a combination of Psora and syphilis. John Henry Allen also calls the tubercular miasm as pseudo-Psora. So you have the blue of Psora, you have the red of syphilis. You combine that, you have the purple of tubercular. Now you see, one of the interesting things, key word is dissatisfaction. What is physical dissatisfaction? I'm craving for something, but I know whenever I am taking it, my body is not satisfied with it. It's throwing it up. I crave for things which makes me sick. Argentum nitricum loves sweets, but whenever they take sweets, it causes diarrhea. Tuberculinum loves fresh open air, but whenever they go into the fresh open air, it causes a cold. So I'm craving for things, but unfortunately, I cannot tolerate it. It's making me sick. Mental dissatisfaction. I'm not satisfied with anything. I'm bored easily. I want change. I want new things. I always want a new stimulus. I want change of occupation. I want change of jobs. I want change of partners. Never satisfied. Vagabond mentality. Today's 21st century is psychotubercular. Why is that? We all need excess. We all need more and more and more and more. And when we get it, we're not satisfied with it. We are tubercular. We need change as well. So the modern urban 21st century has a dissatisfaction of tubercular, has the excess, need of excess for psychosis. Very interestingly about the tubercular miasm as well, you see I mentioned the alternating manifestations, periodic manifestations as tubercular. Why? I'm sharing that with you. If you think of Psora is hypoimmunity. So there is lack of low immunity. So whenever I'm going into a fresh air, whenever I'm going into the pollens, whenever it's hay fever season, sometimes I get a sneezing, sometimes I get a cold. So hypoimmunity. Now, as time progresses, as the pathology is unchecked, as you have not received any constitutional remedies, What happens? Every time you go into the cold air, every time you're exposed to the pollens, you get a sneezing, you get hay fever, you get asthmatic symptoms. So there is total destruction of immunity. So you have the hypoimmunity of Psora, you have the destruction of immunity of syphilis, and when it joins together, you have recurrent manifestations which falls under the tubercular domain. So recurrent manifestations, periodic manifestations come under the domain of tubercular miasm. You see, I mentioned allergic manifestation, food allergies, dust allergies. We have shared with you cases in the sessions that where we have incorporated miasms, allergies to start with is Psora because it is hypoimmunity. But again, gradually as time progresses, syphilis causes the destruction of immunity. You have the tubercular recurrence. So food allergies, dust allergies to start with the Psora because there is hypoimmunity. I eat an egg, sometimes I get urticaria. But again, as years flow by, as time has progressed, every time I eat even a small quantity of egg, I get urticaria. And then, my friends, you have to prescribe a tubercular remedy. And that is very important. So allergies are tubercular, recurrent allergies to be very precise. Hemorrhages are tubercular. And as I shared with you, periodic alternating symptoms are also under the tubercular domain. So you see, if you understand these 4 words, irritation for Psora, hypo for Psora, incoordination for psychosis, hyper for psychosis, destruction for syphilis, DYS for syphilis, and dissatisfaction for tubercular, and alternating, periodic, recurrent manifestations for tubercular. My friends, it is like a formula which you can apply it with your patients. I like to share with you the emotional areas, just in a nutshell, about each miasm. Psora, as I shared with you, again, try and understand the formula. There is so much lack of energy, there is laziness, there is lack of activity, and they are the sterile philosopher, lots of ideas in their head, but unfortunately, they cannot materialize it. There is no practicality. So when you go to the house of Mr. Psora, he has a huge library, but you ask him, have you read all the books? Oh no, just the first page. Because it's always a superficiality of Psora. It doesn't have the practicality, it doesn't have the depth. Full of ideas, as I shared with you, theoretical persons. You get that with sulfur, you get that with cannabis indica, where you have that kind of building castles in the air. Again, you see sterile philosopher, false philosopher, the kind of appearance which you get with sulfur. You know, they are unwashed, unkempt. Why? Again, A, due to lack of hygiene, also due to the excess laziness as well, hypoenergy, and that is Psora. Again, you will find with Psora, there is a lot of sedentary lifestyle. So they do not want activity. You ask them, what is your hobby? And they will tell you, I just like to lay down. Again, this is important. In cases whenever you are stuck, you see there are not much symptoms. You just come across a case of a headache. He doesn't know. He doesn't have any symptoms. Ask him about the hobbies. Even if he's taking conventional medication, that won't alter his hobbies. That won't alter his nature. So you ask him what's his hobby. Mr. Psora will tell you, if I get a week off, I'll just lie down and I'll watch telly. So that kind of laziness, that kind of low energy, that kind of low activity is so much characteristic of Psora. As I shared with you, quickly fatigued. So there is indolence, laziness, as well as low energy as well, because energy is poor, hypo, Psora. Hopeless, lack of hope. This is also important. You see, this is also important to understand how the miasms progress. Hopelessness to start with the Psora, but again, whenever there is total hopelessness, total destruction of hope, like you find with aurum metallicum, that becomes syphilis. So to start with, it will be Psora, but again, it becomes totally persistent and takes on a destructive form. That's when syphilis joins in. As I shared with you, 3 A's for Psora: anxiety, alertness, apprehension. So you see the face, there's a fearful face, there's a anxious face, what you get with calcarb, what you get with arsenic. Along with that, Psora is shy, Psora is timid, because there is a hypo courage, there's that hypo interaction you'll find with Psora, and that is very characteristic of Psora. So fearful, anxious, low energy, lazy nature you'll find with Mr. Psora. Weakness of memory, again, my friends, to start with is Sora, but gradually as time progresses, you'll find whenever you come across cases of senile dementia where there is total destruction of memory, and that's when syphilis joins in. So, sometimes they forget something, sometimes they remember. To start with the Sora, but gradually as time progresses, syphilis joins in. I shared with you these 3 anxieties of Sora: anxiety, alertness, apprehension, and that you'll find with Sora. Mental restlessness, they are always thinking what's going to happen, how I'm going to cope up, how I'm going to maintain my economy, how I'm going to maintain my finances. So there's a lot of mental restlessness going on, and that is Sora. Whenever it becomes physical, they're going across the room in cases of ADHD. When there are so much physical hyperactivity, that's when psychosis is there. Physical restlessness is Sora, but mental restlessness, which is dependent on anxiety, which is dependent on fear, that is always a feature of the Psoric miasm. You see, I shared with you fears, any kind of fear, school-going fears, fears of disease, fear of failure, all come under the domain of Sora. Sora is the fearful miasm. Like what you get with Calcaria carb, all the fears under the sun come under the domain of Cal carb. Similarly, Psoric fears are a lot. Introvert, to start with the Sora, as I shared with you, hypo-contact, hypo-interaction, lack of interaction, to start with the Sora. But again, when they're totally detached from everyone, even from family, even from near and dear ones, that's when syphilis joins in. So introversion to start with the Sora. But again, gradually, when there is total introverted, total detachment, then that is syphilis. We come to the next miasm, which is the miasm of psychosis. Whenever you understand psychosis, I'd like to share with you 2 areas. I'm sure you know psychosis. I'm sure you know the psychotic medicines. But there's an interesting thing which I've learned as an ancestral tip. You can get 2 varieties of psychosis, my friends. You'll get one psychosis who are always expressing it, who are always loud, who are always telling you on your face. They are shouting, there is rage, there is anger. That is psychosis. They cry. They bring out their emotions. There's an outlet to the emotions through tears. That is also psychosis. You have that in pulsatilla. You have the rage, you have the anger, you have that with nitric acid. But at the same time, you can also have an inward psychosis. So there, in one hand, you have the expressive psychosis. And on the other hand, you have the inward psychosis. What do you mean by the inward psychosis? Jealousy. Suspiciousness. I'm suspicious of my husband. I'm jealous of my next door neighbor. But these are human emotions which you cannot express, which you keep inside. You express it through different actions. You do not go out and tell, yes, I'm suspicious, I'm jealous. But these are human emotions which you do not express. So the jealousy of lachesis, the suspiciousness of lachesis. Think of the retention of natrum mute. I have a grief, I'm not being able to express it. And that is also psychosis. So you have one variety of psychosis which is always expressing their emotions, which is all there, where there is always an outlet through emotions, could be through tears, could be through words. But there's also another variety of psychosis where there is no outlet to the emotions. They're keeping it inside. The jealousy, they're keeping it inside. The greed, they're keeping it inside. The suspicion, they're keeping it inside. And even the retention of emotions like of natrum mute, they're keeping it inside. So that's why whenever you look, we have the detailed list of the miasmatic weightage of each remedy in the course. We have discussed about that. You'll see we have mentioned that a medicine like pulsatilla is also psychosis 3+. A medicine like natrum mute is also psychosis 3+. But both have different avenues to express their grief. Pulsatilla will express it through tears, whereas the natrum mute will keep it inside, brood and sulk about it, and that is also psychosis. Because you have the expressive psychosis, you have the inward psychosis as well. And that is very important to understand whenever you're discussing psychosis. You see, weepy, expressing their emotions, pulsatilla, outlet, expressive psychosis. Religious, excess, over the top. That's also, to a certain extent, psychosis. Workaholic, excess working. Also, you have to understand one of the major reasons for psychosis to be workaholic is one of the major fears they have is fear of poverty. So I work, I overwork, I go behind, exceed the clock hours as well, because I want to build up my bank balance. I want to build up a stable financial future, because I have a strong fear of poverty. As I shared with you, Sora has all the fears under the sun, but whenever you come across psychosis, psychosis has the strong fear of poverty, which you have with medicines like bryonia, and that is very diagnostic of psychosis, and that is one of the major reasons why they are workaholics. Deceitful, sneezy, sleeky. Think of a medicine like Mr. Thuya, who likes to exploit, who likes to manipulate. You'll never know. You have a next door neighbor who is Thuya, and you have an interaction with him, and before you know, you're in bed with Mr. Thuya. So that kind of sleeky, sneezy nature you'll have with Thuya. Again, human emotions which you do not express, keeping it inside. Psychosis. Exploitative, manipulative, so common in today's 21st century. People are waiting to deceive you. People are waiting to manipulate you. Again, keeping it inside. Psychosis. Materialistic, excess greed, as I shared with you, only fear they have is fear of poverty. So they're very, very materialistic, greed for money and material gains. Absent-mindedness, as I shared with you, think of children, 8-year-old, 10-year-old, who are trying to concentrate, but their mind is wandering off to that video game, mind is wandering off to that soccer game which is going on. So absent-minded, I'm trying to concentrate, but I cannot. Why? Incoordination of psychosis. Selfish behavior, always trying to be possessive, and that is also psychosis as well. But they will do it in a subtle way, they will not be aware of it that they're behaving selfishly. Again, that is an inward psychosis which you cannot always see. Fastidious, over the top, excess, it's like the obsessive compulsive, checking and rechecking, cleaning it again and again. Think of the arsenic who is cleaning the room, cleaning everything, making it infection free. Even dressing up beautifully like a Platina or a Mac Carb or an Axvomica. It's the excess, over the top sometimes. And that you have with psychosis. Physical restlessness, I shared with you, psychosis. Like you get cases of hyperactivity. But whenever there is a lot of mental restlessness, whenever there is anxiety and fear, that is always a feature of the psoric miasm. As I shared with you, tendency to suppress, tendency to conceal, not expressing my grief, the retention of it from you. And that you have with psychosis as well. But what is the interesting thing here? That if you think of a psychotic medicine, although they are upset, you'll be able to know that they're upset. They'll sit in the corner of the room, they'll sulk and they'll brood in silence. But their partner knows, the children know, their parents know that yes, my child is upset. Yes, my wife is upset. So although there is brooding, although there is concealment, but through their gestures, through their behavior, they'll let people know, yes, I am upset. Again, you see here, anger, rage, hyper, excess, that is psychosis. But again, psychosis, anger, psychosis, aggression is always a verbal aggression. Think of a remedy like Staph aureus, who is expressing it through words. They'll never resort to physical harm. They'll never resort to physical violence. Think of medicine like anacardium, cursing and swearing. They'll never resort to physical violence. Why? Because they are bounded by the domain of psychosis. They're bounded by the boundary of psychosis. They never cross that line and jump to syphilis. But a medicine like lycinum, a medicine like tarantula, they will be aggressive, they'll break things, they'll damage things, they'll hurt people because they have psychosis and syphilis in them together. So sometimes it is very important to understand miasm, to understand what is the extent of the remedy, how much the remedy can go. As I shared with you, medicine like nitric acid, medicines like anacardium will never cross that line. Medicines like Staph aureus will never resort to physical violence. It's through words, through verbal aggression, which you'll find with these remedies. Extrovert, excess, hyper contact. Think of phosphorus. Think of medicines which have excess contact, the need for contact. As I shared with the Sora was introverted, but psychosis on the other hand is extroverted, because only when they meet people, they will be able to manipulate, they will be able to deceive. So they need that contact to satisfy their personal gains. And that is psychosis. As I shared with you, obsessive, compulsive, checking and rechecking. Why is that psychosis? Hyper, obviously. But at the same time, you also have to understand behind every obsessive compulsive disorder, there is a hidden link of suspicion. So there's a constant suspicion. Did I close my door? Did I close the room? So there's a constant suspicion, and that suspicion is definitely a feature of psychosis, and that you'll find with Mr. Psychosis. You see in the top picture here, greedy, always want more food, more of everything, and that greed, that excess is psychosis. I'll come to the syphilitic miasm right now. And if you think of syphilis, you see the red is the color of destruction. See the bottom picture, he's hitting that person. So that physical aggression. And you have to understand that is the difference between the psychotic aggression and the syphilitic aggression. Psychotic aggression will be verbal. Whatever they may say, tell you on the face. But whenever it's a syphilitic aggression, they resort to physical harm. Tarantula, medicines like lysina, medicines like mercury, they will resort to physical aggression. They will hit you, they will damage you physically. Suicidal love for their life is destroyed. So they do not want to live anymore. And that kind of destructiveness you can find emotionally, you can find physically as well, which could be homicidal, which could be suicidal. Malicious, and they want to destroy others, and sometimes they actually do and commit the act of destruction. Total loss of memory. Memory is completely destroyed. I shared with you earlier on, poor memory to start with the Sora, but when it's total destruction of memory, think of terminal cases of senile dementia. We have discussed senile dementia in the course, where we have talked in details how to start with senile dementia is Psoric, because they're gradually forgetting, but as time progresses, as the pathology is unchecked, it becomes totally syphilitic. Absent-mindedness, on the other hand, is psychosis, because you have the incoordination, which is important. Destructive impulses, killing, murder, suicidal, homicidal tendencies I shared with you is definitely syphilitic. Introvert, love of socializing is destroyed. I'd like to share with you a little bit about this here. I shared with you in psychosis, a psychotic depression, whenever they're depressed, they'll let people know, yes, I'm upset, I'm depressed. Because they'll sit in the corner of the room, they're sulking, they're brooding, they're sighing even, like you have with Ignatia. Or they're brooding like Netramure. But whenever you think of a syphilitic depression, we call that as close-mouthed. Kent gives a beautiful example of a syphilitic depression in Order Metallicum. He has been a good father, he has been a good husband, but he had a nice dinner with his family. Next morning, the wife opened the door, he was found hung in his room. So syphilitic depression is always a close-mouthed depression. You never know what is going inside. It is never reflected outwardly. It is never reflected on your face. And sometimes, my friends, it is very, very difficult to diagnose a syphilitic depression because there is no outward expression. There is nothing on the face for you to see. So that kind of melancholia, that kind of destruction of hope, destruction of joy with suicidal tendencies where there is nothing on the face, we call that as close-mouthed, and that is definitely a syphilitic depression. Desire for solitude is syphilis. Only thing that gives them some degree of comfort is praying. So you'll definitely find Mr. Syphilis, whenever they're so much upset, so much depressed, spending time in the prayer rooms and spending time in the church, trying to mediate something with God to help them overcome their depression. Close-mouthed, this is important. Psychotic depression, yes, I'm depressed, but people know around me. I'm sulking, I'm in my room, I'm listening to the sad music. But a syphilitic depression is totally close-mouthed. Nobody knows that what's going on. Pessimistic. Syphilis is generally pessimistic. Again, to start with the Sora, but when the glass is half empty, as you see in the bottom picture, then that's when syphilis joins in, which you have with causticum. We come to the fourth miasm, and that is tubercular. So common in today's 21st century, dissatisfaction. If you think, as I shared with you, how will you incorporate miasms? Think of cases of one-sided diseases, a case of a skin eruption where you don't have any symptom to deal with. Even the generals are not marked. Think of a case of a migraine where the patient is on conventional medicines and you don't have a clear modality, don't have clear sensations to prescribe. Ask them about your hobby. The Psoric hobby, as I shared with you, is lazy. They will lie in the room. They like to watch telly. They will enjoy, the quarantine period. Think of a psychosis. They like being extroverted. So they like partying. They like going out. They like gambling. Why? I want more money. I want to build up my financial future. So gambling, need for greed is important for psychosis. Syphilitic hobby, anything to do with destruction, anything to do with the thrill of life and death. So going for bungee jumping, going for hunting. So going for boxing, where there is that degree of adventure, combine that with aggression. By the same time, whenever you think of a tubercular hobby, tubercular hobbies are always outward hobbies. They always want contact with open air. They love fresh open air. They like horse riding. They like gardening. So wherever there is contact with Mother Nature, they like to be in fresh air. At the same time, when you think of a tubercular hobby, they have creative hobbies, artistry. So drawing, painting, knitting, floral arrangements. So all kind of artistic hobbies come under the domain of the tubercular miasm. So sometimes even if you're stuck, try and understand through hobbies. We have shared with you different approaches in one-sided cases where you can come up with a diagnosis of the hobbies. Dissatisfied, as I come back to the tubercular miasm, dissatisfaction. Changeability, you see, in the morning she's doing vandalism, she's breaking the car. In the evening, she's enjoying a nice candlelight dinner. So that kind of changeability you'll find with tubercular. You have that with tuberculinum, you have that with pulsatilla. Those are medicines of changeability. Impatience generally comes under tubercular miasm. They're very impatient, they're very stubborn. Think of the problem child or the no child which you have with the tubercular. Remember, for tubercular, there is total fearlessness, except sometimes they have a fear of furry animals, dogs and cats. Psora has all the fears. Psychosis, fear of poverty. Syphilis, again, no fears. There is fearlessness. Why? Because there's no realization. They don't realize it, that what is fear. There is a lack of realization in syphilis. Whereas with tubercular, again, they're fearless. Sometimes the only fear they have is a fear of furry animals, dogs and cats. Belladonna, China, tuberculinum, those are medicines which have the fear of dogs and cats. You see, again, you see this picture, he's breaking the glass window. Why? You understand, tubercular is a combination of Psora and syphilis. So that impatience, that stubbornness with destructive traits comes under tubercular, because you have the syphilitic component in tubercular as well. So they are impatient, they're stubborn, but at the same time they can be cruel and destructive, because tubercular is a combination of Psora and syphilis. And that syphilitic destruction is reflected in the tubercular aggression as well. As I shared with you, only fear is the fear of dogs and cats and any furry animals, to be very honest. Now you see, this is all the interesting thing to understand. I shared with you, tubercular is dissatisfied. They're easily bored. They want change. Now think of Mr. Tuberculinum. How they want change? They will go out, they will travel around the world, they will board on a cruise ship and travel all around the world. Think of medicine like Calcaria Phos. How are they dissatisfied and how are they satisfied? They want drugs, recreational drugs. That gives them the stimulus. That gives them the high. That makes them satisfied. And you'll come across people who have gone through these and now they feel there's nothing more in life to enjoy. There's nothing more in the world to see. And that dissatisfaction, that need for change, that boredom is gradually creeping into an indifference. I feel I've seen it all. I feel there is nothing new in my life. I feel I'm stuck in the circle of existence. I have no change in my life. I'm stuck in my daily routine. I'm stuck in my 10 to 5 job. So that dissatisfaction is gradually causing indifference, which you have with sepia, which you have with phosphoric acid, which you have with gelsomia. So my friends, as I shared with the introvertedness, where I don't want to meet new people, where I don't want to interact new people, that is to start with the Psora. But as gradually they become detached and isolated, that's when syphilis joins in. But on the other hand, whenever you have dissatisfaction, which is creeping into indifference, because the need for change is not there. They cannot find ways to whet their appetite, to satisfy their appetite of change. And that's when indifference creeps in, and that's tubercular. So that is quite important to understand the difference between a tubercular indifference and a psoric and syphilitic introversion. Stubborn, do not like advice. Remember, tubercular children are no children. Food, no. Drinks, no. Go out, no. Play, no. Everything they're no. So they're always a big headache for the parents. And that's why tubercular children, no children, problem children. Complaining, but do remember, whenever it's more behavioral complaining, so they get down on the floor, they roll on the floor, they will make people embarrassed. The parents are embarrassed, and that's more tubercular temper tantrum. But whenever it's a vocal temper tantrum, I want this, I want this, I want this, that's more psychotic temper tantrum, which you have with chamomilla. We have the moaning, the whining, which you have with chamomilla. That's more a psychotic temper tantrum. I shared with you verbal aggression, verbal temper tantrum is psychosis. But in case of tubercular, it's more behavioral. They'll get on the floor, they'll stamp the floor. I want this, that kind of behavioral dominance you'll find with the tubercular miasm. Indifference, I shared with you, is definitely a feature of the tubercular miasm. Craves for things which makes them sick. I shared with you, they love fresh open air, but they know whenever I'm going into the fresh open air, I'm going to get a cold. So they feel dissatisfied due to that. This is also quite interesting for the tubercular miasm. Polarity. They can be intelligent, they can be dull as well. Semester 1, grades A in everything. Semester 2 failed in all subjects. So that polarity between intelligence and dullness, that can be reflected in tubercular miasm. You'll feel in the first semester, oh, my child is a phosphorus child. Second semester, oh, is he a baryta child? So that kind of polarity on two ends. And that's also the changeability. That's also the change which you find with the tubercular miasm. And that's quite important. We'll go to the last slide, please. 4. I'll end up our discussion with a few interesting areas. I'd like to take you to how to look at the nails and prescribe. This is an ancestral tip which I've learned from my ancestors, and I like you to share with you this very interesting ancestral tip. I'll go through the skin initially, and again, it's like a formula. You see the dry, half rough skin, and that is a feature of psora. So dryness in the skin, harsh skin, that is always a feature of psora. Lack, hypo, secretion, psora. Unwashed appearance, psora as well. Whenever you come to psychosis, psychotic skin is always excess. You look at the skin, you see I shared with you look and diagnose. It looks full of warts, it looks full of moles, fibrous growths, and that's psychosis. It's crying out loud to you, I'm psychosis. Why is this psychosis? Remember, my friends, you have the yellowishness, which is the color of psychosis, A. You have the thickening of the skin, which you see here, that's also excess, that's psychosis. And sometimes, do remember, circular pattern of eruptions is generally psychosis. So thickening is psychosis, yellowishness is psychosis, and circular pattern is psychosis. So when you go back to your skin cases where you're stuck from tomorrow, I want you to have a look at those skin. Try and diagnose the miasm first. You have the dry appearance, think of psora. You have a lot of thickening of the skin. You have a yellowish appearance of the skin. You have a lot of warts and moles, think of a psychotic remedy to prescribe. You see again here, the color is yellow of the head and it's crusty, thick, psychosis. Fluid-filled eruptions, vesicular eruptions, which you have with Rustox, which you have with Croton Tig. Excess fluid, psychosis. You see again a lot of blisters and vesicles, psychosis. You have this kind of bully, this kind of vesicles in Mancinella, which has the largest blisters. Keloid, scar tissue excess growth, again that is a feature of psychosis. You see again, why is this psychosis? It's a formula. Look at the nature of the skin, thick, crusty, psychosis. Look at the color of the skin, yellow, psychosis. Look at the surrounding skin where it's fluidy, it's moist, psychosis again. Lymphedema is generally psychosis because excess, that's a feature of psychotic miasm. Pigmentation to start with is psychosis, because excess blackening is psychosis, whereas vitiligo, where there is destruction of pigmentation, is syphilitic. So again, like a formula, thickening of the skin or blackening or pigmentation with growths and yellowish appearance of the skin is generally psychosis. We come to syphilis. Again, it's a formula. You see pustular psoriasis, where there is pus points, syphilis. You see fissures and cracks, where there is destruction of the mucous membrane, syphilis, cracks and fissures. You see a lot of mouth ulcers, which you find with mercury, borax, where you have a lot of actine ulcers, syphilitic again. See this kind of destructive ulceration. It's a knee portion, where you have this ulcer in the skin. Medicines like tarantula, medicines like anthracinum, where you have this kind of destructive tendencies. So look at the skin, try and diagnose the surface miasm first, because whatever is on the surface, it's for you to see, and it's crying out loud to you here that, yes, I am syphilis. We come to the tubercular miasm. Redness of the skin. So this kind of allergies, these kind of redness is under the domain of tubercular. You see again, the redness here, it's tubercular, but you have some blisters as well, which is psychotic. Whenever you have a mixed picture, always try and understand which is the prominent feature, and thereby you'll be able to diagnose what is the surface miasm. You see this kind of redness. Whenever you come across a tubercular miasm, you can have either hemorrhages, so there's an outward reflection of the congestion, or you can have an inward congestion where there is redness in the skin. Skin was really red and flushed. So it's an inward congestion, and both come under the domain of the tubercular miasm. Outward congestion through hemorrhage, inward congestion through redness. So even medicines like lacasis, which have a lot of excessive bleeding, hemorrhage, is tubercular. Medicines like belladonna, where you have the redness and flushing of the skin, where there is inward congestion, that is also tubercular. You see again, toxic erythema, redness, congestion falls at the domain of the tubercular miasm. Could be an allergic reaction, that's also tubercular. Hemangioma, what miasm is that? Excess growth, psychosis. But at the same time, it's related with hemorrhage and blood, tubercular joins in. Anything to do with blood and hemorrhage always comes under the domain of the tubercular miasm. Acne with lot of redness in the skin. You see flushing, redness, congestion, tubercular. Medicines like phosphorus, belladonna, tuberculinum, which have this kind of congestion and redness, is tubercular. So you see, if you think of the skin I shared with you, dry, unwashed skin is psora, thickened skin, yellowish skin, moist skin with vesicles, psychosis. You have a lot of ulceration, cracks and fissures, and that is syphilis. At the same time, you have a lot of redness in the skin, and that's tubercular. And I'll end our discussion, and I want you to try this with yourself, with your family, with your patients. See the miasm and prescribe. This is an ancestral tip which we have inherited to generations. Again, but like a formula, I can do, definitely you can do it. Look at this nail, dry, harsh nail, psora. Look at this nail, lot of thickening, lot of ridges in the nails, wavy nails, psychosis. You look at that nail, it looks very, very thick, looks a lot of ridges and wavy. That's the incoordination, humps and bumps. That's psychosis. Look at this nail, yellow nails. The yellowish appearance of the nail, that's psychosis again. Again, look at this nail. We have a lot of ridges. Remember, my friends, convex nails, where you have the convexity, is definitely psychosis. Look at the bottom nail here, thickening of the nail, psychosis. A lot of ridges and bridges in the nails, psychosis again. Incoordination, psychosis. You look at the top nail here, you see the convexity of the second toe, and you have this kind of convexity in psychosis. You'll never miss a prescription when you see this kind of nail. It's destruction. It's saying to you, you have to give me a syphilitic medicine. Destruction, degeneration, syphilis. Again, you see the degree of destruction of the nails. It's almost half is gone. That's syphilis as well. Look at this spoon-shaped nails, which we call as koilonychia, which you have with anemia. Spoon-shaped nails, concave nails is syphilitic. Convex is psychotic, whereas concave is syphilitic. Destruction, as you can see in the fingers, is also syphilitic, but there's also psychosis as well, because you see the thumb is quite swollen as well, and that swelling maybe due to gout as well, that is psychosis. So again, whenever you have mixed pictures, you have to come across what is the surface miasm. Ingrowing nails, hemorrhage on the nails, even glossy nails are tubercular. So white spots on the nails which you see on the children are also tubercular. So I want you to go back, look at the nails, and I want you to prescribe. Look, if you see dry, harsh nails, Psora. If you see thick nails, yellow nails, ridges and bridges on the nails, convex nails, very convex, psychosis. If you see a lot of destruction in the nails, a lot of breaking down in the nails, syphilis. But if you see glossy nails, spotted nails, hemorrhage with the nails, tubercular. My friends, through this 1 hour or through the program, if you have attended or are going to attend, I'm not going to change the way you prescribe. So you may be dependent on repertory, on Metromedica, on any methodology of prescribing, but I want you to incorporate miasms in your practice. Say you are done the repertorization and have come up with 3 medicines, and the 3 medicines are sulfur, mercury, thuya. And you're confused that my repertory shows up sulfur, mercury, and thuya, what to prescribe. You look at the nail, it shows a very thick ridges on the nails and yellow lines on the nails. And that just helps you to confirm, yes, I have to prescribe a psychotic medicine. Which is a psychotic medicine amongst the 3? Thuya, you prescribe thuya. You look at his hobbies, you're confused. You look at his hobbies. Oh, you know, I love going for hunting. And that's one of my favorite hobbies. I love going for kickboxing. And that's a syphilitic hobby. You're confirming that, yes, mercury is the prescription. So don't change the way you prescribe. I'm not asking you to go out of your comfort zone, but just incorporate something extra with your patients. Incorporate miasms in your patients. Because 50%, as I shared with you, is miasmatic totality. 50% is symptomatic totality. Thank you very much. I hope I was being able to make clear the emotional picture and the look and diagnose of the miasms. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Banerjee. That was indeed very informative. Now, before we go for the question answer session, can you please request you, please could you talk about the course that we are doing at the Homeopathic Academy with you?
We are doing the entire program on miasms in the Homeopathic Academy. We are going through each and every areas. Initially, we are starting with the 4 criteria, as we have mentioned here. And then we are gradually going to the emotional picture, but in much details, which we are discussing. And then we are going on to the particulars, head to foot, because sometimes when you come across particular symptoms, you're confused. And then we go across to the head to foot symptoms. We are going across to that. And one of the major interesting areas we have incorporated in the program is we are going through common clinical areas. Think of respiratory conditions, joint conditions, emotional, psychiatric, clinical conditions. So we'll be doing a miasmatic dissection on asthma. We are doing miasmatic dissection in a case of psoriasis. So we're incorporating common clinical conditions. And one of the very major important factors is cancer. We have gone through a detailed miasmatic dissection in cancer as well through the program. And then we have also gone through the skin and nails in much details with much vivid pictures so that you can incorporate, look and diagnose into your practice. And lastly, we have finished up with different keyword cases where miasmatic prescribing was incorporated. A case of psoriasis where we're dependent on miasms. A case of cystic hygroma where we are dependent on miasms. A case of Hashimoto's thyroiditis where we are dependent on miasms. So we have tried to incorporate to make it most practical, because you understand, for a student, for an undergraduate student, or even a postgraduate student, miasms is always best kept in the closet. It's always a thing which is, we all know it, but we don't want to discuss it. We don't want to incorporate it. But what I have learned as an ancestral tips, what I've learned from my granddad, from my dad, that you have to incorporate miasms with your patients to see the best permanent results. So do not keep it, like a gene hiding in your closet. You have to incorporate it. And through cases, through pictures is the best way to get the practical understanding of miasms. We haven't discussed much theoretical areas. It's mostly practical. We have incorporated organon in different areas. We have incorporated J.E. challenge, pseudosora in different areas, and try to make the course as much practical as we can through cases, through pictures.
Thank you, Dr. Banerjee. Now, before we take up the questions, I would like to inform all our learners that THA has come up with an offer on the right-hand side panel where you've been typing your questions. You have a little offer section. Go to the offer section. We have 40% discount on Dr. Banerjee's course on the Homeopathic Academy on learning the art of rapid classical miasmatic prescribing. So we have already been flooded with questions. The first question is dysmenorrhea and menorrhagia in a young girl. Is it syphilis? Why or why not?
That's a good question, to be very honest. Dysmenorrhea as a general symptom is syphilis. But whenever you have a specific modality, I mentioned that in the initial starting points, that if you have a specific modality, say the patient is telling you my dysmenorrhea is better by bending forward, by dysmenorrhea is better by pressure, that specific modality, that peculiarity makes it different. So that's becomes psychosis. Sometimes somebody is telling you I have dysmenorrhea, but I have a very fishy odor of the menstrual bleeding, and that fishy smell is psychosis. So whenever you have very specific set of symptoms, and then you always go to the particular and depend on the miasm which is depicting that particular set of symptoms. So sometimes these general symptoms will help you whenever you're stuck in one-sided cases. But if you have a very clear symptom picture which is differentiating you further into the particular symptoms, go ahead with that miasm first.
Thank you, Dr. Banerjee. The next question comes from another learner. How do you correlate irritability and hypo in psora?
The irritation is not the nature, but the key word is irritation. So the irritation here is manifested through the anxieties, but the hypo is the criteria. So the symptoms which you have hypo here, as I shared with you, hypoxia, anemia. So these are the criteria. The hypo is more related with clinical conditions, but the irritability is a key word which helps you to dissect the anxiety and the apprehension.
Thank you. The next question is tinea corporis is which miasm and why?
If it's a circular pattern of eruptions, as I shared with you, circular eruptions are generally psychotic, but they become very recurrent. So you have to think of a psychotubercular medicines. So basilinum, other remedies which have psychotubercular miasm, which will come in handy. But again, if you have very clear set of symptoms, if there is pus with that, or if there is a fishy discharge with that, the miasm changes. But as a broad outline, I will say it's psychotubercular because of sometimes the circular appearance and the recurrence which makes it tubercular.
Thank you. The next question is workaholic nature of nux is psycho or syphilis? Psychosis or syphilis?
As I shared with you, workaholic nature is psychosis because again, nux vomica is quite ambitious. Nux vomica wants to succeed, and sometimes that is always related with their nature, desire for material gain, and that makes it psychosis, as they have sometimes the fear of poverty.
Thank you. The next question comes from learner. Old dementia is what miasm? I think this person wants to say senile dementia is what miasm.
As I shared with you, dementia to start with is psora, but again, when it becomes totally persistent and recurrent, and they have totally forgotten present and the past, that's when syphilis joins in, and that will be syphilitic miasm.
Thank you, sir. How do you assess the depth of the remedy? How deep can it go?
By the ability to cover the miasms. So whenever you come across symptoms, we have discussed that in the course. We have discussed each polycrest and the miasmatic weightage of the remedies. We have gone through the symptoms from Borica's Metromedica, and we have dissected each remedy in the course and how it covers the different miasms. So we have discussed about 50 polycrests in one session, where we have discussed about the miasmatic weightage of each remedy.
Thank you, Dr. Banerjee. I would like to inform our learners that because we are time bound, I may not be able to take up every question, but I'll try my level best to pick up every question as much as possible. So the next question is how one defines miasmatic block in terms of anamnesis of a case. And could you please cite one example?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
The learner has written how one defines miasmatic block in terms of anamnesis of a case. Can you cite one example?
Sometimes whenever you are stuck with symptoms, especially in cases, we have discussed that in the in the course as well, that we come across cases where there is suppressed symptoms. We are not finding any good totality. This can be because of iatrogenic suppression through medicines or even emotional suppression as well. And in those cases, your well-selected medicines, although you have prescribed, are not responding. You have a good totality of an atrium mu. You have the retention, you have the sulking, but there is a constant overdose of steroids due to his osteoarthritis. And there you have a blockage due to an iatrogenic suppression. Sometimes you take care of the hobbies, you look at the present symptoms and you come across the surface miasm. Sometimes on prescribing a miasmatic remedy, you open the case and you can again go back to an atrium mu. You prescribe medrhinum, which is a psychotic remedy. You open up the miasmatic blockage, you can again help to facilitate going back to an atrium mu again.
Thank you. Another question we have from the same learner is, how would be the line of treatment while doing a miasmatic analysis, keeping in view miasmatic block?
I shared that with you through the hobbies, through the nails, through the skin symptoms. You look at the nails, that won't be altered. You look at his hobbies, you look at his emotional nature, which I discussed in detail, even though there is a miasmatic blockage through iatrogenic suppression, but still what you'll get is the symptoms.
Thank you, sir. This course is running simultaneously live on YouTube. So we have some questions from the YouTube viewers too. One of the questions is how to differentiate between hypo and hyperimmunity in a miasm.
How to differentiate between hypo and hyperimmunity.
Hypo and hyperimmunity in a miasm.
There's nothing as such called hyperimmunity. Hypoimmunity is the low immunity which you can have with psora, and that is inviting the infections. Just to start with, that is psora, and gradually as it becomes recurrent and persistent, that's when tubercular joins in.
Thank you, sir. The next question is, varicose veins is which miasm?
I shared that in the picture. Varicose veins, to start with, is psora because there is stasis as well. The etiology is psora, but the manifestations of varicose veins is psychotubercular because you have the elevation of psychosis, and sometimes you can have hemorrhage and stasis of the tubercular miasm. So the etiology to start with is psora because of the stasis.
Thank you. Next question, how to choose miasm if a patient has diabetes or hypertension? And maybe another learner wants to know, in case of diabetes and hypertension, if the patient is asymptomatic, then how do you go about it?
Again, as I shared with you, this is the common dictum. Whenever you come across cases where there is asymptomatic or there is suppression, you look at his emotional picture, you look at his hobbies, you look at his essence of the case, you look at his nails, you can definitely come up with the surface miasm even without presenting symptoms. And that is a common guideline to any case which is A, asymptomatic, which is B, there is a suppression of symptoms.
Thank you, sir. The next question is, why is tubercular purple? I think the learner wants to know the color. Maybe why is it purple?
I shared that when I was sharing with you. It's a combination of psora and syphilis. Again mentioned, this is an authentic source mentioned by Ortega in his book Notes on Miasms. Psora, the color is blue, syphilis is red. You combine that, purple is tubercular. But it doesn't have any practical implementation other than cases of varicose veins where you can get a purple appearance of the skin.
Thank you, sir. The next question is, how do you cure a mixed miasm?
I shared that with you as well. You have to go across the presenting symptoms, what symptoms it points to, look at the nails, look at the diagnosis through even the hobbies as well, and you will be sometimes able to take up a mixed miasmatic case. But a mixed miasmatic case, one of the very important things to understand, it's like a lotus flower. There are different layers to it. So whenever you're prescribing for a particular symptoms or you're prescribing on the surface miasm, you peel off on one layer and immediately another layer will come up. So you have to go one step at a time in mixed miasmatic cases. You take care of one set of symptoms, you go across with it, and next set of symptoms come up. H.A. Roberts in his book mentions in the chapter on suppressions that sometimes the approach to suppressed cases is by miasmatic approach. You look at one set of symptoms, it's like prescribing in a zigzag pattern, and that is important to understand mixed miasmatic cases.
Thank you, Dr. Banerjee. The next question is, just now we've received this question, amenorrhea for more than 2 years would be syphilis or psora?
Again, it's a very abrupt question because amenorrhea obviously is a psoric symptom. You have to look at the other features. It's just a clinical diagnosis. Sometimes we are misled with clinical diagnosis. You have to look at the generals, as I shared with you. You have to look at the other clinical areas.
Thank you, sir. The next question is, so is it the expression of emotions that helps to differentiate between miasms?
Sorry?
Is it the expression of emotions by the patient that helps a physician to differentiate between different miasms?
Yes, if you have very clear emotional symptoms, obviously in cases of emotional suppression, you have to look at the particular symptoms, you have to look at the physical generals, but whenever you have a clarity of emotional symptoms, you have to prescribe on that emotional symptom. I shared with you the guideline, how you can come across with the 4 miasms, and you can come across with the surface miasm emotionally as well.
Thank you, sir. Now there are a few people who've raised their hands. They want to talk to you directly. I think there's some connection issue. So meanwhile, I'll take up another question by a learner. What is the difference between pseudopsora and tubercular?
J. Allen mentions is the similar features, so pseudopsora and tubercular, there's nothing to differentiate between the two. And that's mentioned by J. Allen.
Thank you, sir. Now, another question is it possible that we get a PG course by Dr. Banerjee? Well, I think before Dr. Banerjee, I will answer that. As part of the Homeopathic Academy, we are always welcoming Dr. Banerjee. Dr. Banerjee, your opinion, please.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it. We'll try and do more in the future. Yes.
Thank you, sir. Another question, do you consider cancer as a separate miasm?
We have discussed that in details in the program, that when we are talking about cancer, I do not consider cancer as a separate miasm, because whichever symptoms cancer presents, it falls under the domain of the 4 miasms. If you have a lot of irritation, a lot of anxiety with the cancer, that is psora. Whenever there is a breast tumor with a growth which is turning malignant, that is psychosis. Whenever you have syphilis with an ulceration with a cancer, then that is syphilitic miasm. Whenever hemorrhage or metastasis with the cancer, that falls under the domain of the tubercular miasm.
Thank you, Dr. Banerjee. Next question is, how do you relate desire and aversion with miasms?
Again, we didn't have much time to share with that, which is available in the program. I'll give a short overview. Sometimes the desire for things which makes them sick, as I shared with you, is falling on the zone of tubercular. But sometimes desire for sweets falls under the domain of psora. Excess greed for food falls under the domain of psychosis. So these are just a few avenues to differentiate, but we have given detailed understanding. We have a session on gastrointestinal symptoms and miasms, where we have talked about this desires and aversions as well.
Thank you, Dr. Banerjee. One of our learners wants to know about treating children. Do you use the miasm of the parents to help diagnose the child if the child is non-verbal or maybe autistic or any other cerebral palsy or something like that? How do you deal with that?
That's a good question. Yes, we do incorporate symptoms of the parents or the basic essence or the nature of the parents while we are prescribing for non-verbal autistic children. But at the same time, we incorporate a lot about the pregnancy history of the mother, if they went through something emotional, physical, iatrogenic during pregnancy, and if that has a miasmatic influence on the case, that is also given a lot of importance as well.
Thank you, sir. Now, the next learner wants to know the relationship of PCOD and miasm. How do you deal with a PCOD case?
Again, to be very honest, polycystic ovary as a medical diagnosis is psychotic tubercular, because you have polycystic excess and glandular symptoms, scrofulous symptoms falls on the domain of tubercular. But you have to look at every individual case, what symptoms they're presenting. For example, a graphitis PCOD will present you with a lot of obesity. which is psychosis. A pulsatile PCOD will present you with a lot of mood swings, which is tubercular. So you have to depend on the existing symptoms. You see, you have to pick up that guideline. Existing symptoms become more important. When that is not present, you have to look at the medical diagnosis, and then that becomes prominent.
Thank you, Dr. Banerjee. The next learner is, she wants to know, what are your views on Materia Medica Pura by Dr. Hahnemann, where he has listed 48 anti-psoric medicines, but not described anything regarding anti-psychotic or anti-syphilitic, what you are talking about?
That's a good question, to be very honest. But to be very honest, during Hahnemann's time, you have to understand what is the symptoms what people came across with. There were a lot of people who came across with a lot of each, and there was a lot of suppression of each. So the major areas of symptoms which he came across were people who are suffering from bad effects of suppression of itch. That's why he considers 7/8 of all chronic diseases SORA. But again, you understand, if times had changed, and J.H. Allen was a person who came much later after Hahnemann, and he saw the advent of tuberculosis in the community, and that's why he also incorporated tubercular miasm. So with all due respect to Hahnemann, considering his own time, considering the set of symptoms, considering the set of patients which he was dealing with, those were the common guidelines which he gave us.
Thank you, Dr. Banerjee. Another question from YouTube. This is, can after an anti-miasmatic remedy, you can modify the miasm?
Yes, definitely. I shared with you a condition, probably, that miasms change over the course of the lifetime. You come across of a phosphorus case, and they experience disappointment, they experience depression, and they turn to recreational drugs, and they become a calcadia phos. So whenever a constitution change, symptoms change, and symptoms are reflective of the miasm. So even the miasm will change under the circumstances.
Thank you, Dr. Banerjee. Next question is a syphilitic person always honest about their behavior?
Can be, because they do not dread the consequences. As I shared with you, sometimes they can be impulsive, sometimes they do not have any reflection on what can happen in the future. They do not think of the prognosis, and that's why they can be quite honest and blunted as well sometimes.
Thank you. The next question is, how do you relate rheumatism or osteoarthritis or rheumatoid arthritis with miasms?
Again, we have done a detailed about an hour program on joint pains and homeopathy. It's a very big topic. It's not possible to discuss about that, but it depends on the sensations. It depends on the modality, which you have to give importance to that.
Thank you, sir. Just I want to inform the learners again, the offer is running for the first 15 enrollments only. Kindly, please hurry up if you want to enroll with Dr. Banerjee's course. The next question is, please throw some light on half acute, half spiritual miasm and its application in daily life.
To be very honest, practicality is not there that much for half acute and half spiritual miasms. Those are mostly applicable for particular diseases which Hahnemann mentioned. So for chronic diseases which you are dealing with, would not apply that degree of half acute or half spiritual miasms.
Thank you, sir. The next question is difference between pseudosora and tubercular.
Already that question was asked. I answered that.
Has been exactly, that question has been already taken. So the next question is, carcinosin is which miasm? Could you please explain carcinosin with miasmatic point of view?
Carcinosin is a medicine which has trimiasmatic symptoms. It can have the anxiety of SORA. It can have obsessive compulsive behavior, checking and rechecking of psychosis. It can even have the changeability of tubercular. And sometimes when there's outburst of emotions, carcinosin may have a lot of destructive aggression, which is syphilitic. And that spectrum of trimiasmatic symptoms differentiates carcinosin with Staphylococcus aureus or with any other grief remedy.
Thank you, Dr. Banerjee. The next question is autoimmune diseases. How do you deal with them?
Autoimmune diseases, that's a good question. Autoimmune disease, to start with, is psychosis, because there's an incoordination. The body is responding against its own immune system. That's the incoordination. But in time, gradually, the cells start to destroy itself, and that is syphilitic. So whenever you come across any autoimmune disease, think of a psychosyphilitic group of remedies which you have to prescribe.
Thank you, Dr. Banerjee. Now, some speakers wanted to talk to you, but I think there is some connection issue, which is why we're not able to connect with them. So I think, shall we wind up?
Okay.
Okay, we have received another question. How would you define psychosora and pseudosora in terms of tubercular diathesis?
Pseudosora, as I shared with you, is a feature of the tubercular nature, and psychosora, you understand, is a feature of psychosis and sora. Pseudosora, as I shared with you, is a combination of sora and syphilis. The psychosora is a combination of sora and psychosis.
Thank you, sir. Another question is, does helping people make them... Okay, the learner wants to know, does making people aware of their own behavior and change their behavior or modify it, this awareness that they are wrong in their behavior, will it be considered as a change in their miasm also? Maybe the learner wants to know that if a person changes his behavior, maybe by counseling, by psychology or whatever, will the miasm change?
Not so early, it doesn't take a date for a miasm to change, but gradually, sometimes what may happen, you may see same symptoms of this, you may see different symptoms of the same miasm. So he's no more anxious, he's now become more calm, but he's still lazy. So they may reflect different symptoms of the same miasm. So by a flash of one night, it won't change the miasm immediately, but you may portray different symptoms of the same miasm with counseling and with this kind of behavior.
Thank you. The next question is bone caries syphilitic or tubercular?
Bone caries is definitely syphilitic because there's a lot of destruction and degeneration there. But I've seen cases of bone caries. Along with that, there's a lot of exhaustion, which makes tubercular miasm if exhaustion is prominent. But frankly, syphilis is the predominant miasm.
Thank you, sir. The next question, where do we find the details of this course? Of course, on www.thehomeopathicacademy.com, you will find a detailed course with Dr. Banerjee on learning the art of rapid classical miasmatic prescribing. Please go there. The discount code people are asking, the discount code is mentioned right there on the offer section. The next learner says, can we please share your screen where you explained nails, miasm with the nails, and explain it again. I think
that will be available later on. So.
The code for first 15 users is LFH40. Kindly do that. Kindly use this code to get 40% off on Dr. Banerjee's course. Okay, another question. This is interesting. How do you classify COVID-19 under miasms? How should we deal with COVID-19 if from a miasmatic point of view?
If you read Hahnemann's aphorisms on diseases classification, you'll see it's mentioned epidemic disease falls under acute miasm. So it's definitely a feature of acute miasm. You cannot classify symptoms into that because it's an acute condition. So it's not possible to classify into that, but it's an acute miasm.
Thank you very much, sir. I think I should wrap up now because if we continue, we will keep getting questions from learners. We are running really short of time. I would like to thank you, Dr. Banerjee. I extend a very warm gratitude to you on behalf of the Homeopathic Academy, on behalf of the BJain group. We will come soon with another webinar for all you learners who I couldn't pick up your questions or Dr. Banerjee could not answer them due to a shortage of time. Thank you, Dr. Banerjee. Would you like to say something?
Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed, those who joined in, and please enroll into the program. I'm sure you'll learn new things and you'll get to know a lot of practical areas of prescribing miasms. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Banerjee. I would like to thank all you learners, all our colleagues who joined us here, and of course, Team Homeopathic Academy, who has been working day in, day out to make this webinar as well as the Homeopathic Academy a success. Thank you. Thank you so much.